Hi, this is PD at BurgZerg Arcade at BurgZergArcade.com, and this is tutorial 210. Now, we were left off in our last tutorial, which we did earlier today. When we start our character up, he actually starts in the wrong spot. So if we actually click on him, and he should probably be at 000. And actually, he's at 111. So let's just take a look at where we're loading his data up. And let's open up MonoDevelop. It's right here. We're actually not using the default values, which we had stored up here. Starting position. So what we'll want to do is change these to starting position.x, starting position.y, and starting position.z. Let's save that off. We'll head back into the game. We'll just hit clear. We'll start this back up. And there we go. He spawns where we want him to. Now let's go ahead and I guess next we'll do, let's do skin color next. Actually, before we do that, let's go back to our other scene, which was our character customization. And we'll go ahead and just zoom in a bit on the scene itself. And let's just make sure that this script is actually still working. Let's see, so he scales fine. Skin color is still changing. His hair is still changing. He's still rotating. Like I said, there's still a lot more customization I've got to hook up. But I just want to make sure everything is still working right. Okay, we'll go back to our tutorial. And we're going to do skin color next. So I'm going to come back into my PC. I'm not sure if I have a function for it yet. I am going to shrink some of these up. Just because I don't need them right now. And we'll just save it a little bit of room. Or actually, we can close all the Unity functions. And let's just go through. So we're loading the character, which right now we just have load hair. And load hair, we're calling the next two functions, which do nothing. So go down. Okay, we do not have load skin color yet. So I'm going to add that one first. So I'm going to make a public void load skin color. And the reason why, even though it's only going to be one line of code, I make a method for it is I might want to come back and actually tinker with it a little bit. And, if I don't later on, I can just add the one line that I'm putting up here. But more than likely, I'm going to leave it as its own function because I might want to call this outside of, well, I might not want to call all of them all at once. So load, what do I call it? Skin color. And let's go ahead and do that now. So I've gone ahead in game settings. I should have something about skin color. We just finished the player position. Character model we've loaded. Here's where we're saving the skin color, and I'll come over here and show you how I'm saving it. Nothing fancy, it's just an int. And when we load it up, it's an int as well. So we'll shrink that down. So this is the only function we have to call. Now this is actually just going to return the integer. So we're actually going to have some way to position the hair on the person and make sure it's the right scale and everything else. It's pretty much the exact same as we did in our hair script. But I am going to keep it separate. I'm not going to call that script to do it. I want to keep it separate in here. And later on, I'd like to redo all of my character customization scripts to actually use the functions that I have built in here. But that's a little bit later on down the road. So first off, we're going to want to get the index. So we're going to want to instantiate the hair. So let me just actually go ahead and load up our hair script because we already do have pretty much everything written there. So scripts, there's hair. And I'm going to look for the instantiating of our hair. So here's the constructor. Don't need the GUI, don't need the buttons. Next hairstyle, those are buttons. Here we go, here's where we're actually loading the hair mesh. And we're commenting out the mount because we're just using a reference to the PC instance. Right here. Here's where we're actually creating the hair. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this whole line. Actually, I'm going to copy quite a bit of it because this should probably be moved out to our game settings since we're going to be using this formula a lot. But for now, I'm just going to copy it. Let me just take a look at everything here. Here's where I'm rescaling it to match the scale of my character. Okay, I'm parenting it. So there's quite a bit actually here that I'm using. But let's just start off simple. Let's just make sure we're grabbing the right hair. So I'll come in and I'll just paste that in here. And I'm going to want a reference to hairstyle. So I'm just going to make a game object. Hairstyle. And we'll come through. We're going to resource load. We're going to want to grab the path, which if we come into hair, we'll go up here, take a look at path. Looks like path was created down here maybe. Right here. I'm going to take that. I'm actually going to cut it out. And guess where it's going? That's right, game settings 2. I'll come up to the top here where we have our resource paths. And I'm going to add hair in down here. So it's going to be a public constant string, and I'm not going to call it path anymore. I'm going to call it, well, it's the character hair human male prefab. Okay, this is actually grabbing. Okay, well, it's grabbing the hair path. So I'm just going to call this human male hair path. Now I probably could break this up a little bit more, as in once I do start adding more races, make paths to those races. And of course, you know, I just have the basic one that goes to the hair, then I'd add an over race they are, whatever sex they are. But for now, I'm just working with my human males because, well, that's all I have. I'll put them just in one line like that. So I'm going to have to go fix that script, which is in hair. And we'll just want to find path. And we're going to switch this to game settings 2 dot, and of course I forget what I called it already. Let me just take a quick look. Human male, okay. Human male hair path. Then it adds hair. And it's going to add a space. The hair set it gets in here from up here. And then the hair index, which it also gets from up there. And then it instantiates it at the right spot. Great. Now have I copied this over yet? Yes, I have. I'm actually just going to recopy that line. I'll bring it back in. Alright, so hairstyle equals, grab the hair path, we're going to append hair onto it. Hair set, it gets there, okay. Now here we don't actually need to get references to itself. We can just grab its hair mount. And again, I'm going to put these on separate lines, just so the line itself doesn't scroll too far off the screen. And I'll just start with the resources load part. So we have what we're going to instantiate, where we're going to instantiate it, and the rotation we're going to instantiate it at. Okay, I'm going to save that off, make sure everything's saved. I'm going to see what errors I get. Hair mesh index does not exist in the current index. Alright, so here's where we're actually going to have to load that index up. So I'm going to create an int. And I'm just going to call it, well, hair mesh index is equal to game settings 2.load. Let me see. Actually, we're supposed to be working on skin color. And how about into hair? Okay, I'm going to move all this into the hair mesh. So we'll just load hair mesh. And I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at the right function in our game settings. So here's where we're saving the hair. We'll do skin color next. So we save the hair. There's nothing special there. There's the hair color. There's the loading of the hair color. Saving of the hair mesh. Loading of the hair mesh. So it returns an int. Alright, so I'm just going to save that off, head back into Unity, see what other errors we have. We're creating the variable hairstyle, but we're never using it. Let's see, hairstyle right here. We're assigning it, but we're not actually doing anything with it yet. That's fine. We'll just come down here. Next is we're going to want to set its transform to be, or sorry, its parent to be the hair mount transform. That's correct. We'll want to set its render material to equal the hair color. I'm not going to do that just yet, so we'll just add this line. And I like to put a space in there. And we'll go back into the hair. I'm not using mesh offsets now. Excuse me. But you might be. I'm still going to include that. And let me see. The transform local position. Just in case you are actually using it, let's just go ahead and add it. And I keep alt-tabbing, but I just mean to change what tab I'm on. So I'll save that all off. And let's go see if there's any errors. There's nothing. I'm going to zoom in on a loot chest a bit, just so I'm looking at where I'm going to spawn. Alright. Didn't seem to load any hair. I'm not even sure if we're actually calling this function anywhere. Let me see. So load character. Are we calling this anywhere? It would be in my awake. I'm not. So let's just go ahead and add this. And we'll start this back up. And there we go. I have hair. Turn my character around a bit. And that was the hair that I had saved. Now it's the default color because I haven't bothered loading up the hair color. We were going to do skin color next, but I'll go ahead and do hair color next. And just a word of warning, I am going to be redoing this code quite a bit later on. I like just to get it up and running first and then come through and re-optimize. And I'm seeing a lot of areas where I'm reusing the exact same code over and over again, if you notice, between the hair script and the PC script. And originally I wanted these scripts to be separate so I can have them in my character customization, and then later on load the hair script up in game. Maybe you're talking to some sort of NPC that allows you to change your hair color or your hairstyle. And I've actually decided I probably really want to integrate a lot of this functionality directly into my player. If you want to keep them separate, that's fine, but for the sake of the tutorial, I probably will be reintegrating it into our player character. And, well, like I said, there's a lot of duplicate code that we will be combining together, but I'll cover all that as we get to it. I'm just actually going to move this over a little bit here. Okay, so let's go on and work on hair color. So I'm actually loading up, let's see, this is the load hair, and skin color should not be there. I'm going to put skin color right under hair. I actually want to load up the, well, if I'm loading up the mesh and then the color, I probably want to load the color up. Well, no, we can load, no, actually we need the mesh first before we can change the color, because if we went back and looked at our code the way we're doing it currently, you can't change the color of a material or the texture on a material if you don't already have the game object that, well, that creates that material, or at least that it's attached to. But anyway, well, let's just go ahead and do that. So let me see, we're loading hair color. Let me see, I just want to make sure it's in here. Save hair color, it's an index, or sorry, an int. All right, and by default we're doing 0. So we'll come back over here and we'll just look at the hair color textures. And here's where we're actually loading the initial hair. So load hair color texture. That actually, I think that loads them up into our array for displaying on the screen. So we'll just find a color. There's 3 instances of it. And this is our hair color buttons. This is where we actually load the hair color. Here's another path. We're going to be moving up there. So I'll come over, we'll go up to the top, and I'm going to put it with the hair. And of course, now that I'm adding another one, I realize that the first one I should have had something about the mesh. And whoops, this is still a string. And I'm going to call it human male hair color path. And I actually do want to change this to have a mesh in there. So I'm just going to refactor it. And it should change all my scripts. So not only will it change it in this script, it should go ahead and change it in the other scripts. Okay, we have that done. And I cut it out of this script, so I am going to have errors in here. Let's go through the path right here. So game settings 2, and I always forget what it's called. Was it human male hair color path? All right, so here's where we're doing our resource load. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to come into my PC script. See where we have load hair color. Load hair color. There we go. Now this is actually loading a texture. So we're going to need to create a texture for it. And I'll just call this temp. And hair color names, I believe, is just a enumeration. And it's public. And we're just converting it to a string. And we're saving off as a texture. So great. So we'll want to load this up, and we're going to do that. Well, actually, I want to switch that into here, but I still want to have a separate function up here. Let's keep it separate. So the line I actually used to load that hair up before was load hair color, load initial hair. It was above all this. Below that, load hair mesh, right there. Now, it was that one line that we skipped, which was below here. And it was right here. The hairstyle.render.material.main texture, and when we change the color. So I'm going to copy that line. We're going to come into PC, and we'll go down here. Now, we don't even really need to create a temp, as we could just drop this directly in here. But I am just going to say temp. And let's see what errors we get. A whole bunch. Let me see. We'll just start with the first one, CNT. Okay. That's the cut and paste part. Okay, here's where we actually need to use the game settings. So game settings game settings 2 dot load hair color, and we're going to convert it to a string. And hairstyle does not exist, and that's because we have to grab whatever's below our hair mount. And well, let's just type it out. So we're going to go hair mount. So hair mount dot transform dot get child, and if you notice it wants an index, we should only ever have one there, so it should be 0. And we're just going to want to get its renderer dot material dot main texture. I'm setting mine up to only have one texture. If you have multiple textures, you're obviously going to have to change the texture that you're calling. And I'm going to have it equal to temp. So there we go. And we're going to want to call this, well, I'm just going to put that down here. Obviously before the return, before I check any of that. So I'm going to put that here. So anytime I change my hair color, it'll automatically load up my, anytime I change my hair mesh, it automatically loads up the hair color for it. Another way I could do it is pass in the hairstyle here, but then I'd have to find some way to pass it in up here as well. And I don't want to have to keep a reference to it, but let's just try this out. We'll see if we have any more errors. So everything's gone. I'll start this up. And well, I guess we should pick something that isn't a different hair color besides the one that we initially start with. So let me go back to my character generation scene. Actually, I'm just going to go all the way back to the start. So we'll just go up to scenes. We'll do main menus where I start. I'll start it up. I'll make sure I delete everything. And then I'll just come in and type his name. And I don't have it maximized enough to actually see the buttons. Let me just see if, well, I'll just go full screen. There we go. So we'll say PD, we'll just give him a bazillion health. And then we'll hit next to go on to the character generation scene or character customization scene. And I want to give him, there we go. And let's give him gray hair this time. And skin color doesn't matter, but I'm going to give him this nice pasty white. So we'll just say he's an old man from the north. And I will change his scale, just so I know that I actually have a different scale already saved besides the default. And I'll hit save, and I come into game. And it didn't load the hair color up. So let's go ahead and throw some debugs in there, and we'll see what's going on. So I'm going to head back over to Unity. And I just want to make sure that the actual hair color is being set right. So we're grabbing the child 0. Let's actually take a look and see if there's actually more than one hair. Like, we might be calling it more than once. Well, let's just start it up and take a look. And when we start the game up, I'm going to go ahead and click on my player, go to his hair mount, which is right here. I want to expand that. And sure enough, there we go. We have 2 different hairs in there. So it's actually loading 2 of them up. And if you notice, the first one, which is 0, is correct. So if we got rid of the second copy, it is loading everything up the way it's supposed to. I'll just turn the guy around a bit. Maybe make him face the sun. So it is loading up right, but for some reason we're calling this twice. So let's take a look. We're calling load hair. So when we load the character, we're calling load hair, which calls load hair mesh and load hair color. Let me go up here. I just want to make sure I'm not calling this in more than one area. Well, actually, for good measure, we should always get rid of our old hair mesh before we even try to instantiate a new one. And of course, well, we have that functionality already done, so we'll just go ahead and grab that. And I'm going to put that in right up here. I guess it really doesn't matter where. I'll put it the first thing. So we're going to go in, we're going to check the child count of our hair mount. And if it's greater than 0, we're going to go through and destroy everything under our hair mount. So it'll get rid of all this hair. Now this will only destroy 1. Like I said, there should only ever be 1 there. If you're a little paranoid about it, you could put it in a for loop to go through and delete them all, but make sure you have the game object at the end, because you want to destroy the whole game object and not just its transform, because this here actually returns a transform. And then we'll create a new game object hairstyle, and we'll do a bunch of stuff to it. So let's actually try this out now. So I'm going to go shrink this back down a bit. We'll clear it. We'll save this off, and it's still not working. So let me just take a look here. We'll look at his hair mount. And he does only have 1 hair. And now the color is not saving correctly. So let's take a look, see how many times this is actually being called. So I'm going to say debug .log loading the player's hair. Yeah, let's put a line after that. Anytime you're not sure what's going on, debug log is your friend. And we'll start it up, and we'll just stop it right away. I just want to see how many times it loads up. So it's actually being called twice. So we should track it down to see where it's being called twice from. We might actually have to add an initialize property to it, but let's just take a look. I am calling it from void awake. The only other time that I might call it, load player position. Well, let's just find it. It's called 3 times. So let's just start at the top. So we have a load character here. We're calling it load character model index. That's fine. So we're not calling it multiple times here. There's something in the scene calling it twice. I believe we had our MyGUI calling it to instantiate for now. Let me just take a look at the awake. Yes. Yeah, that's not what I wanted to look for. Shrink this down. I'm actually looking for this function now. So we're just calling it once there. I don't see any other scripts that could be calling it in there. The chess script should not be calling. Player camera, it should not be calling, but I will look just to make sure. It is not calling. And that's it. Well, maybe I'm completely wrong. I'm just going to put a debug in the awake function here and see how many times it's called. I'm going to make this a warning. This function should only ever be called once. And I might just add an initialize property. Actually, let's call it PC awake called. And I'll go ahead and clear that out, and we'll see how many times the awake gets called. So it is getting called multiple times. That's what the problem is. Okay, I'm just going to pause the video here while I take a look to see where this is being called from multiple times. Actually, now that I've taken a look at it, it's because of the way we have it being initialized. It's being called twice. But if you notice, the hair is actually being loaded up correctly. I've done nothing to the code. I added a few debugs. I've taken them back out, but let me just comment this out. It actually is loading the hair up properly for us now. I did add an initialize actually. And we're going to be covering this a little bit later, but let me just show you how I set this up. I created a public Boolean value, which is called initialized, and I set it to be equal to false. And then down in my wait function, I take a look to see if it's, well, equal to true or false. And in this case, I'm checking to see if it's equal to false. And if it is equal to false, I want to call this function called load character. And of course, load character is, well, let me shrink some of this right here. And of course, that's going to load our hair, load our skin. It's going to load our scale. It's going to load everything up by default. And then we're going to set the initialize to be equal to true afterwards. And that's pretty much it. So this one's just over 30 minutes. I'm going to call this one done, and we'll see if I get any more done later on tonight. I'll upload the updated scripts today anyway. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.